Hey everybody, it's Boardman21 and today's build by request is going to be a Sorcerer using only Volcanic Orb for damage. Someone asked for this build and so we went about it trying to find a way that would make it sustainable and do good damage, and this is what we came up with. We are staying away from making it cold, so you have to keep it fire, and it's going to be a fiery volcanic orb. We did end up using the idols to make it not move, so it's not like we're firing it off. We were thinking about it. We tried a couple of different ways to make it actually go by increasing its speed, but basically in the tree to use anything that really specializes in that, one, you can't use the idols because it slows it down, and two, all of the increased speed besides one was stuck behind a 2-second duration, which almost halves the duration, which is going to have the total damage output. So it didn't make sense to try that. So we ended up just going with the stationary orb. We went into a lot of hit damage, and we went with piercing shrapnel to make the shrapnel do a bit of damage. The other thing that we're doing to kind of go into a little bit of damage is, since we have fire aura proccing on crits, we went with high crit, so we're going to be running a one-handed weapon with this. So the hit damage will be a little bit lower, but the nice thing about the stacking fire aura is, since this is a full fire build, you actually get some pretty decent damage out of it, and things like rats or other things that come and attack you in melee range tend to take a lot of damage, and you leech quite a bit of that, so it really increases your survivability. Even though it's not your main damage source, it does help kill things, as you'll see in the footage that's going. Alright, let's go ahead and get started with the skills. Alright, first skills, we're going to be running Teleport, Focus, Volcanic Orb, Flame Ward, and Enchant Weapon. Now, a couple of things before we get into too much detail on the skills. There is a third mastery class, the Ruin Master, that will be coming, and I'm really hoping that the Ruin Master will come with some passives that are better to use to buff yourself than things like Enchant Weapon that's meant for melee builds, and you don't really need Focus either, or you don't need to spec into Teleport. Teleport doesn't really do you anything other than some decoys. So once Ruin Master is implemented, hopefully there's a couple of skills in the lower part of its tree that will help buff this build so that Volcanic Orb will do more damage, or so you'll have more survivability. However, remember, the reason we chose these skills is because the only damaging skill that we were supposed to use was Volcanic Orb, and this build will be built completely around that. So, with Teleport, we have 5 points in Crystalline Passage, 5 points in Plasma Protection, and 5 points in Time Dilation, so that you get a bunch of protections that last for 8 seconds. We also have 3 points in Elemental Affinity for some increased elemental damage, fire, and 2 points, 1 in both decoy position and 1 in unexpected copy, for some mirror images that will help with your survivability because mobs will chase them instead of you. For focus, we only use this when we're out of mana. It's really only in like boss fight types. The rest of the time when you're running the map, your mana stays pretty consistently full. We have 4 points in Desperate Meditation, 4 points in Mana Flooded, 4 points in Energy Battery, 1 point in Energy Infusion, 3 points in Everward, and 2 points in Mind Shield. The last 2 points will also go into Mind Shield for more ward gain from the mana gained. For Volcanic Orb, like I said before, we were going for basically as much hit damage as you could get, and then we went for the piercing shrapnel. So we have 6 points in Molten Core for 210% increased hit damage, 1 point in Volcanic Frenzy for slightly faster cooldown recovery. We only went with 1 point here because you don't really need to cast it super often. It is nice to have 2 or 3 points in this when it comes to boss fights so that you can spam it, but you don't ever want to stand at one spot too long with this build, so it's nice to have that cooldown because it keeps you from standing in one spot and dying. You'll just cast it, keep running, cast it again, keep running. We have 4 points in Volcanic Acceleration for another 140% hit damage. The speed per second doesn't really matter, even with a full 3.5 second duration of a Volcanic Orb, it doesn't move at all with our idols. We have 2 points in Monolith Eruption for 70% more hit damage. The Shrapnel gets another 70% hit damage, and then the Shrapnel frequency is decreased. 5 points in Lava Flow for that 100% mana efficiency, very important. You don't have to have that if you want to use Focus more often, and therefore you can do more damage. 1 point in piercing emeralds, so the shrapnel pierces, and 1 point in glyph of fire, so it will create a fire glyph every 1.3 seconds, dealing more fire damage. Now, if you don't want to do the mana efficiency, these 5 points can definitely go towards things to do more damage. You can put 1 more point in molten core. You can put 1 more point into Infernal Caster for more hit damage. And again, you can go to Explosive Ground, and you can go to more frequency in the Explosive Ground with that 5 points. You could easily maximize here. That's going to make it cost over 100 mana if you went with all of those, which means that basically every time that you cast it, you'd have to focus as well, which would be a lot more standing in one spot, and I wouldn't recommend it, but you can. With this build that we have here, we've made it up to Monolith 25 runs, so it's not a horrible build. Alright, for Flame Ward, we are using this for damage and for a little damage reduction. But we have 3 points in Star Ward defense and 4 points in barrier, and the rest of this is going to be offense. We have 3 points in dilation, 5 points in infusion for that 250% increased fire damage, 1 point in fire aura, and 4 points in Eye of the Flame, so that our fire aura damage is plus 200%. And then for Enchant Weapon, we have 4 points in concentration, 4 points in efficacy, 4 points in immolating strike, 1 point in burst of fire, 2 points in flame burst, and 5 points in eternal flames for that increased ignite duration, and it's 50% when it is active. For passives, we have 30 points in the base Mage class with 7 points in Scholar, 8 points in Elementalist, 5 points in Arcanist, 2 points in Knowledge of Destruction, and 10 points in Preparation, so that every 3 seconds your next spell will do an increased 200% damage. Since we're not casting this super often, this has way more of an effect. We have 10 points in Spellblade with 2 points in Arcane Warden, 8 points in Elemental Affinity to unlock Enchant Weapon, and 72 points in the Sorcerer with 8 points in Calculated Destruction, 8 points in Mana Shell, 10 points in Wisdom, 8 points in Pyromancer, 5 points in Lavamancer, 10 points in Arcane Insight, 5 points in Spellslinger, 5 points in Arcane Obliteration, 8 points in Crackling Precision, and 5 points in Archmage. For items, the idols that you're going to want are these Volcanic Orb, increased damage, and reduced Volcanic Orb speed. We also have doubled fire damage if you have over 300 max mana. We don't in this build. I think we fall just shy. We have 297 mana, so I would recommend, like for the weapon, getting more mana instead of blind on hit. That's what I would recommend, so that you can get that double damage. The other thing that you can go for here, right here, is increased mana. We could get 1 more increased mana with this, and we'd have that 300 no problem. For weapon, we just went with straight spell damage. Instead of the spell damage and minus spell mana cost, you can do fire damage. But for the chest and the helm, you're going to want the percent chance to cast fire aura on kill, and the percent chance to cast fire aura on critical strike. Between those two on both items, what do we have here? 23 plus 36, 59. We have almost a 60% chance on every critical strike or on a kill, like altogether, to have a fire aura, which means we're going to be stacking a lot of it. And then for our jewelry slots, we're going to do the set elemental protection and the set dodge. For the offhand, you want that base spell critical strike chance so that you can get fire aura more. And for the boots, just more dodge rating. The gloves is going to have some health leached from your damage on hit. And we want some critical strike avoidance and some more dodge rating. For the gameplay on this, it's really straightforward. You're just going to keep running and just drop an orb every once in a while. And as mobs chase you or as you run into them, you're just going to drop an orb, and it's going to be stationary. It's going to be hitting them as they run through it, as they stand there on it, or as you place it on them. Alright, and here's the gameplay.